Hello. For today's coffee chat, I wanted to do a bit of a story time and tell you a little bit about the first dog that I shared my life with, my childhood dog. So she was a black and white Cocker Spaniel and her name was Ella. When we were kids, my mum was a stay-at-home mum, and I think she probably wanted a dog for a bit of company, and she thought that having a dog would be good for us kids as well, which obviously it was. So we got Ella the way most people got Ella. Most people got their dogs in those days, or people like us anyway. You'd have a look in the livestock section in the local advertiser paper, free paper, and there advertised was this little Cocker Spaniel, 4 years old. I don't remember how she got to our house. I guess my dad went and picked her up, or they dropped her off. I was only about probably 6 years old, I would have thought. I do remember the first day that she came home, because I remember that she sat in front of the front door all day waiting to go back to her home, because she didn't know that this was her new home. She was about 4 years old and she did have kennel club papers. She was a pedigree dog, but I don't think she was a particularly good specimen of the breed standard, but she was a sweet little dog. I think that she might have been treated quite harshly. I don't think she was cringy or anything, but she was a little bit reserved and she didn't really know how to play. I think she'd been left to her own devices and she'd not learned to build up a bond with a person. Having said that, she was a sweet, gentle little dog. But in those days, dogs were much more background sort of animals that blended in with the furniture a bit more than they do now. They weren't the forefront of the family for a lot of people, the way that our dogs are for us now. I remember that when we were old enough for us kids to take her for a walk on our own, that she often used to just run straight back home to find my mum. As I say, she wasn't really a player. She wouldn't chase a ball or get excited about those things, but she was a friendly, sweet little dog, and I remember her little docked tail would wag like crazy when she saw you. I can't remember what her kennel name was. I know it was long and ended with the word Bell, which is probably where the Ella came from. I also remember she wasn't allowed in the living room, which a lot of dogs weren't at that time. She would stay in the kitchen and the garden. She wasn't allowed upstairs or in the posh rooms. But I do remember once going out somewhere with my mum, and I had a pencil case. It was like in the shape of a giant pencil, and the stopper was a great big pink rubber, and I had left it on the floor in the living room. Got back and found it was mysteriously chewed up, so she must have, when we were out, regularly snuck into the living room to get some comfort or see what was interesting, and this time she left evidence, so we knew what she'd done. I also remember one day being at school, and you know how sometimes you're out and you just suddenly miss your dog? I was quite a sentimental and emotional child, and I remember being at school and suddenly really, really missing the dog. And I remember crying. And I said to the teacher, because she was like, well, why are you crying? And I said, I just really miss my dog. And she was like, oh, well, what's happened? I was like, oh, I miss my dog. And she was sort of, has something happened to your dog? Have you given your dog away? And I was like, no, I really miss my dog. And I remember I assume a teaching assistant taking me outside and being worried and talking to me about it and saying, you know, does your dog not live with you anymore? And I was like, no, but she's not here, is she? She's not here. And they couldn't understand why I was so upset, but it was just because I missed my little dog. And in the end, she kept asking me, and I couldn't make her understand. So she said, does your dog not live with you anymore? And I just said, oh yes, that's right, just because I wanted the conversation to end. And I remember my mum coming to pick me up from the school and saying to me, why did you tell the teachers that we don't have Ella anymore? And I was just sort of, I didn't say that. So yeah, some things don't change. The funny thing about her was we had her till she was 14 when she finally crossed the Rainbow Bridge. But in the last year or so of her life, she suddenly had this second puppyhood, whereas she'd never played before. She suddenly discovered the joys of chasing a ball. And she had all this excitement and energy that she'd never had as a younger dog, which was lovely to see her blossom and have that happiness. And she passed away quietly and quickly at home. We didn't have to take her to the vets to be put to sleep. She didn't have any long illnesses. She just went, and that was that. And she was my first dog. And I really wish that I'd understood more about dogs then that I do now, but I was a kid and it was the 80s and we didn't even have the internet. You had to go to the library and see what they had there, and knowledge about dogs back then, a lot of it was pretty flawed. So when I look back on any of the dogs I've had, I can't help feeling that I've done them a bit of a disservice because I didn't know enough, and I didn't know the right things, and I didn't understand, and I had my own stuff going on. But I wish I'd known and had given them a life more in line with what they deserved. I don't know why I'm getting. But yeah, so that was my first little dog, Ella. In the comments, maybe you'd like to tell me about your first dog and what your experience of beginning life with a dog, maybe when you were very young too, was like. That's all I've got to say for today. See you later.